Okay, it's recording. So what I wanted to do is, first of all, this is Nathan, who is an artist and a very complex, deep person. And I wanted to try and show with this video just a bit of, and I don't know if it's going to work or not. Any data for me is good data at this point, how we can start to apply some of these ideas around the ladder of poetry to real living artists, because otherwise, if it can't do that, then it's, uh, I don't know, something that looks aesthetically satisfying but is functionally useless. Nathan, what kind of art do you do?
My main thing is painting. I
Yeah,
really like sort of, I guess you'd say like life studies or stills. Um, I like painting objects for the most part. Yeah, everyday things like a can or like a room or something like that. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but I've dabbled in a lot of other stuff. Like I've done not a lot of other stuff, but yeah, I've done photography. I think like the last time I saw you in person
Mm,
was last year, and I think at that point I was more interested in photography.
but yeah,
Mm.
true. Um, okay, so what I think that the most seamless way to get into this is actually probably if I read you a passage from the essay that I wrote recently entitled Poetic Consciousness, where I sort of go through the different stages. And this is the stage that when we talked last, I was sort of placing you in, which is the iconoclast. So here it is. Okay, so the iconoclast works to create symbols with their art of themselves as a symbol of a way of life. So to give it a phrase, they create symbols of a symbol. Lord Byron created works of art that symbolized his self as a symbol of an individualistic way of life, while Whitman symbolized his self as a symbol of a loving way of life, among many other things, because that's the nature of a symbol, is that they are sort of simultaneously specific and constrained, and yet also inexhaustible. So we recognize the way, like what Lord Byron symbolizes, but we can't just come up with a definitive list of it. We just kind of sense into it. And it's the same with Whitman. And then I have a colleague who creates works of art that symbolize something like an accepting, flowing way of life. And then I refer to you in the essay, and I say I have a friend who is a painter who creates works of art that symbolize his remembering way of life. And then I put in brackets, remembering what is important in life, which connects to the Buddhist notion of sati. And then I also go into just, I won't go down that path. And I said, so the iconoclast is what I say. I think how this system could potentially help them. And this is what, in our last conversation, we hit a bit of a stumbling block where we couldn't quite make our way through this. And this is my best crack at it, and we'll see if it opens anything up. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, that's fine. Uh, so it is my sense that the iconoclast needs help making conscious the fact that they are working with two poles. They do not realize how much their self is a part of the creative process for them. The poetic or creative mentor therefore needs to help them realize this so that they can participate consciously in their daily life with the way of life their creative drive is inextricably bound up with, so as to further clarify and amplify that transmission. That's the core thing. and I've been talking for a little bit. What's your first thoughts? I can translate it further if needed.
I'm pretty much on board with you at the at the very least with everything there, and it feels like you've sort of refined things a little bit more
Yeah.
since the last time we spoke, which is probably born of necessity. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Um, so what I had this sense of in building this system, and when I came to the Iconoclast, was just imagining how Lord Byron or Walt Whitman, they obviously at some point it would have become conscious to them what their whole artistic career was about and what they symbolized. But it would have taken
Mm.
some time to get there. And I wonder if they'd had a system that placed them um, and helped them to understand exactly the logic and the nature of what it is they were doing. That their way of life was actually symbolized in their art. If that would have helped them to transmit even more clearly what they were.
You know, like just as you're speaking, it it's like I do actually feel like I see something more in what you're saying, like just spontaneously from you
Yeah,
saying it. I think what I'm seeing now that I hadn't seen before is that I think I was looking at it more like how the person, say Walt Whitman would like how him coming more in touch with himself or recognizing himself would actually affect the art. But for the first time, I'm actually just seeing how it could be the other way around as well. How like the recognition of that and like the way that you make the art could also reflect back onto you as well.
Hmm. Can you
Yeah.
like elaborate on that? Like, because I think you're onto something there.
Well, like the last time we spoke, I think what because of sort of like not I don't mean this in a bad way, but because of like the pressure of it's almost like we were trying to figure something out or like
Yeah,
or at least at the very least like you were probably more trying to help me figure something out as well.
yeah.
But when we were talking about it, I think I was seeing it more in terms of like, okay, well, I guess if I figured this out more, then I could maybe create in a better way, or I would remove some of the obstacles that I would have to creating. Because there are like a lot. Like, I don't think I've actually painted anything in like 2 weeks, for example. I have all the stuff. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
literally
yeah.
have it all set up,
Yeah,
but, or not set up, but I have it all in the other room.
yeah.
Um, all sorts of things can get in the way. And so I think I was seeing it as like, okay, this could help me remove some of the obstacles to making the thing. But now, like for the first time, I'm seeing how making the thing could probably also remove some of the obstacles for myself as a symbol. And they probably feed forth in tandem in that way, where it's like by better understanding my process, I'm better understanding myself and vice versa. Where I think before I was only seeing it as more process oriented.
Yeah, right. So like actually creating things helps you to see your what you're trying to do. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think
Like
let's keep going. Yeah, like I
like
feel
it
like
helps
I
you to understand yourself, like by
yeah,
creating.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let me just like sit with that. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I know there is a feedback loop there. And I
Because
think,
like if you think of like I mean, I have this over here in Melbourne quite a lot, and like I'm sure you've met people like this, but some people they definitely build up their sense of identity based around their art, just in the way that anyone would build their identity based around anything, right? Like they think of themselves as an artist. And actually, in our last conversation, I was saying to you how that hasn't really occurred for me at
mm,
all, actually, for
yeah,
the most
yeah,
part. Um, but I
right.
think
Yeah,
it
yeah.
probably stands to reason to say that maybe you either exhaust or you get to a point where it's not just a matter of like sort of feeding into your identity, but you're also actually sort of taking something from the process of creating
That's
that's
it.
more
That's it.
sustenance
Yes.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I think what you were getting there is what I was trying to get at when I was saying, like, at a certain point, Lord Byron and Walt Whitman, they would have, it would have like clicked for them as a result of looking at their work, like, oh, like this is what I'm about, this is what my work is about, and then and so they take something very deeply from that. And I think what that is that they're taking from that is an awareness and making conscious of the what I'm going to basically call their creative self, like the personality of their creativity, of their creative self. Um, and what I think when Lord Byron and Walt Whitman, I'm just assuming that at some point they did realize it because it was the transmission just comes through so clearly that I can't help but think they would have been conscious of it to some extent. Um, that Lord Byron was deliberately trying to represent a different way of life. I think he would have been aware of that, obviously, on some level. Um, and then, and then I guess what I'm saying is that had he been had he been aware of, let's say, this system, would he then have been enabled to consciously, in his conscious self, start to participate creatively in what his creative self is and sees himself as? And I'm being quite abstract here. I'm trying to ground it. Like he, if he's like, okay, I'm going to represent, and I'm just going to speak really simply here. I'm going to represent a more emotional, passionate way of life. Then he can consciously say, well, okay, now I know that's the identity of my creativity. That's my personality of this semi-unconscious creative drive in me. Um, so now consciously as an ego, what are things I can do in my life to further embody and
yeah,
elaborate and manifest and exemplify this? And there's a way, I think, in which doing that would essentially like feed that creative self, and the transmission will come through even clearer. And so it's like uh, basically, I think the iconoclast is quite unique in the sense that their art isn't just the actual painting or the poem, it's their lifestyle
yeah,
and actually artistically working on both domains simultaneously is like crucial to the flourishing of the iconoclast.
yeah. Where you're, it's like it sounds kind of like you're borrowing little bits from one and the other. You know,
Yes,
like you create something and you borrow something from the
yes,
fact that you created it, but
yes.
then when you have that more affirmed in yourself, you borrow that in order to create something more as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, all right. So this is good. This is satisfying for me to like draw this together because it's been in the back of my mind since that last conversation. Um, so then what I would say is um, to now that we've sort of built that out and made that connection, we can apply it to you. And I think that for you, and I'm just going to make these statements not not intending to be definitive at all, but in the opposite,
God
intended to be
forbid.
provocative. Um, I get the sense. So if we, and you seem to resonate and agree that like your what you symbolize as again, it's inexhaustible, but it's something like remembrance. If we
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I think that's like the higher manifestation of what I would symbolize. Oftentimes, it's probably more forgetting, but
right,
yeah.
right, interesting. And do you think that that forgetting has shown up in your artwork,
Uh,
or
Lack thereof.
how do you mean?
Well, if I'm if I'm in a state of forgetting, I'm probably not going to be that inclined towards art.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is exactly the point that I'm trying to make. It's not we're not necessarily talking about so Lord Byron, he symbolizes passionate way of life, but I'm sure that he wasn't that all the time.
Oh
That
yeah,
yeah, like that passionate thing was the personality of his creativity. And so,
yeah,
and kind of like it's the same analogy that I'm saying with you. I think like when we look into your art and your creative personality, the personality that's manifesting is something like a way of life that's based around remembrance.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then, um, I think that we could say that for you, like, I think this is the point. If we take this seriously, what we're saying here, then you get to be creative, not just on the canvas, but creative on the canvas of your life, like, and imagining where, like, the kind of life that you could live that could become in itself a symbol of remembrance. So, like, what kind of life could you live to like further, I don't know, embody that particular quality?
There's a word that I guess I don't think people use anymore, but there was an old French word called flaneur. Have you ever heard of this?
Say it again.
A flaneur.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. And
Do
sort
you
of
want to
like the
explain it
idea
anyway?
is, sorry?
Do you want to explain it anyway?
Yeah, so the idea of a flaneur is it's essentially sort of like a social commentator, but they actually used to employ these people to basically just go out into the world and sort of observe and view society and then like offer conclusions on it. So sort of like I suppose you could say it's a form of like loose journalism,
Right.
informal journalism, if you like.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to consider that that would just not be a job nowadays. Like there wouldn't probably be the even like the attention for that kind of thing. I think it just wouldn't really survive. Like obviously there is journalism, but even journalism sort of has to resort to drama in order to draw an audience. But
Mm,
the reason I bring it up is that I think what my natural line is, or when I'm kind of at my best, I think I'm very much in that kind of category as like a sort of flaneur. Like I do like very much to go to a place or be here in the city even, and I like to sort of just go out with this kind of brand new eyes
yeah.
approach to things, and see what's going on and sort of feel into a space or go talk to different people, meet different people, and sort of just be involved. So it's kind of like it's not really a fly on the wall. I thrive off of like the involvement. Like I like to to bridge the gap between my person and what's going on as
Yeah.
well, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's really cool. That's getting exactly at what I'm talking about and sensing. So, a flaneur, what would you say is, I guess what I'm trying to get at, and I don't know if it's a question worth going down or not, is just what do you imagine to be some of the key things that might that might help you to further carry that quality, further embody that quality into your life? Like you already do that. But let's say, and I anticipate you continuing to do that for the years ahead. What is there anything additional that you feel like maybe not even immediately, but in time you could start to bring in your life in order to further embody that quality?
Mm. Yeah, I don't know if my answer is going to really be satisfying for you because it's
Yeah,
very sort of personal and technical, but like, yeah, I do like basically for me, what would enable me to do me better, I think, would often be learning how to um probably like calibrate myself better. I think I have a sort of a penchant for intensity. So I can follow a lot of intense things, and I'm not really that good at registering how they're taxing me. But you always, you know, um, Charles Bukowski said that like the falsest form of economy is the sort of last bit of work you do in a day, right? It's the falsest form of economy because it's like that last bit where you just I've just pushed for a little bit more. You always pay for it the next day, and then ultimately that starts to become a sort of repetitive theme in how
mm,
you live. But it's sort of enculturated into us that if we can do more, we should. But I'll draw a parallel with my personal life where it's like sometimes I want to kind of go on a bit of a mission or an adventure with something or someone. And like that is actually taxing me. And I could probably use better time to actually just rest in a lot of ways and not sit and watch TV, but I mean like actually rest, like sit and digest what's been happening, things like that. And sometimes I think if I'm not calibrated in that way, the
yeah,
ways that I'll seek that reprieve that I might get from that rest would be counterproductive. And then,
yeah,
you go back to the falsest form of economy. I might binge eat or like,
yeah,
you know that I'm sober now, but historically I
yeah.
was abusing drugs for years just to try to get
Okay.
that rest, I think, a lot of the time. Yeah.
So do you think that having that rest would enable you to then, I guess, fulfill the flaneur function more consciously and presently and
I think like rather than saying having rest, what I'd say is that I think if my personality, let's say, was better calibrated, I think that what that would lead to, if I had to anticipate it, I think it would sort of lead to a greater sense of safety
I,
and
I could.
security in myself.
Okay, so I think I just got a sense of something that's actually probably quite deep. Um, I think the whole thing we're talking about is quite deep, but I think so. Okay, I I I feel like I can say this because we are quite close as friends. So just letting the audience know that. Um, I think that you have a I think what could make a flaneur, let's say an effective flaneur, is almost it's connected to what you were saying about the safety. It's almost like building up a strong sense of um suppose I want to say one's like self, one's identity, one's um boundaries. And I think that rest is like a really central part of that because that is almost like the boundary between just like the world and you. And that building that up over time would actually, curiously enough, in this way that seems almost paradoxical, enable you to further embody the quality of a flaneur.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
why I was bringing up the Bukowski
Yes.
thing, because you think that sometimes by going further into something, you're getting more out of it, but it's often quite the contrary.
Yes. 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 That's great.
But that very thing comes with calibration of
That's
character and
yeah.
personality. And the reason I gave you that answer is because I have had tastes of what it's like to have more of that, but
Yeah.
it's a slippery sort of slope. And also, I think the lifestyle that I've lived, like, I've, you know this, but like for viewers, like I work overnight a lot of the time,
Yeah.
and working overnight, and then there's an analogy I have for this that I think is really apt, like just from like something that happened for me today. So today, like before we had this conversation, I was at a park here in Fitzroy, and I was just talking to this girl on a park bench, and like I was sitting, and we sat and spoke for like 2 hours, and we did speak a lot about art actually. And while we were there speaking, at some point, like the sun was really quite bright and intense, and like I have this new tattoo that I've showed you, like on my arm here, and like you're not supposed to get your tattoo in the sun, like when it's new, like because it can damage the skin. Like so, I've put like sunscreen over it, but it's still not good to have it directly in the sun. But I
Yeah.
remember at one point in the conversation, like the sun was really directly bearing down on the tattoo and I could feel it. But it just would have been inconvenient based on where we were sitting on this bench for me to really move much more. I felt like I had to kind of like a lock in it just sort of, we were in a good space. So
Yeah.
like it would
Yeah.
have been quite hard for me to fully rearrange my body. But the natural instinctual decision for me at the time is like, it's like my sense of self-preservation just goes away in that moment because I'm more focused on her. And the reason I'm sure you can sort of see the essence of what I'm saying. If I'm into something, like I throw everything else away a lot of the time, and
Yeah.
it can actually later be problematic. Where I don't think I've often learned how to be like, just move your arm,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
just rest,
Yeah.
just don't drink Red Bull before you go to work. Like it's
Yeah.
not that complicated, but
Yeah.
it's just when you're involved in the thing, for me, like I really want to take it all the way, and I like some of those aspects of me, but the cost can sometimes cause problems with the whole check and balance, I guess.
Yeah. 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 You know where
Does
this
that make sense? Does that analogy like
it
have
makes
any?
no, it
Yeah.
makes perfect sense, and it actually helps me to see something more clearly as well, which is that I think if we're following this thread, um, we it's not just it would seem to me that it's not just rest that would help facilitate embodying this quality more, but it's also something like the general structures of stability, basically. And that doesn't have to be like a 9 to 5 job, but some kind of consistent job and something
Mm.
like that. So
Yeah, it's yeah,
yeah,
I think that's totally right. It the thing about stability is that it's not intense, and
yeah,
like,
right,
and
right,
when you like that flavor, it's funny because when you get a taste for it over time, you don't sometimes even know you're seeking it out,
right,
but you
yeah,
are like in some
yeah,
way
right,
you
right,
you are looking for it, and it feels quite normal for you to just live your everyday life like that. But if you, like, for example, I imagine between the two of us, if
yeah,
I just gave you access to my, like, let's say feeling body, like on a day-to-day basis, I imagine it would probably feel uncomfortable to you, or I imagine it would probably blow you out actually because
right,
it's
right,
just, it's strong. I can feel when I'm talking to you, like you're
yeah,
more balanced than I am in general, so it would probably feel like a lot of pressure.
yeah, right, right, right.
Probably be interesting at some points,
That'd be an
but at
interesting
other times it
experiment.
might feel
Yeah,
like a lot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, at the risk of complicating things. What I think is occurring to me is, and I find it interesting. Like I think we've been on the same page this whole conversation. Um, and I don't know if you found it insightful, but I have. And then what it makes me think of is just maybe something that I haven't exactly dug in on too much, which is what is it? There is a creative drive in you that has a calling towards
Yeah.
towards this remembrance. and it is effectively powerful enough to basically be almost like this thing that is driving you through um, I guess, this change and this, it's helping you to start to develop more boundaries and rest and to seek out those stable structures and things like that, which to my mind just makes me think of how powerful that drive is. And then I immediately start thinking, well, what is that drive? Because I would go so far as to say that whatever that drive is in you and in any other artists that I could work with, um, is and even the drive in myself as well. Like, but I want to facilitate, I want to help. It's almost like it has a language and it needs a translator, and I want to be that translator, and I want to say, and I want to help the conscious ego figure out what it is the creative drive is trying to do, and then what the conscious ego can do to help support that and grow towards it, so that there is, growing along two lines eventually into like this one embodied thing, integration and creative integration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think if anything, what you're saying is more like being like a pastor, right?
It is what?
Like
Uh,
I think of being like a pastor, like someone who's
yeah,
like
yeah,
you're kind of trying to wed those
yeah,
two things together and sort of like put them in matrimony rather
yeah.
than having them isolated from one another. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And my sense is that there hasn't really been artists out there, except for, I have to, I can only guess, poet like Shakespeare, um, and artists of his, caliber. But every other artist, because can only assume he had some kind of esoteric knowledge to create what he created. Um, but the rest of us mortals don't have a translator to our creative drive. And so what ends up happening is that the conscious drive, sorry, the creative drive drives us unconsciously. Um,
Yeah.
And I just think that's not as efficient and generally effective. It is effective because it's a powerful drive. It's like driving us towards some kind of evolution, but it's just not as efficient.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely agree.
cool. Great. Well, feel like this was a satisfying conversation then. Is there any um, last thoughts or anything like that that this makes you think
Yeah.
of?
We have time for one more question you could ask me.
One more.
People people like people like questions in interviews.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Ooh. Well, I've asked you how this
And
applies
then
to.
maybe I'll ask you one after.
Yeah, because I've asked you how it applies to you. So let's see if there's any other angles that we could go down for you. Um, do you think that having a kind of community uh, of similar like artists, would you would you find that? How do you think that would impact you? Do you think it would be valuable in any way if you were to somehow have some kind of a community of people who uh, we all kind of agreed were iconoclasts as well? What would the
That would
effect
be
of
a
that?
funny community.
I know, right? It would be like such a paradoxical, oxymoronic thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there probably would be some benefit, but to answer you more like accurately, no, I don't think there would. because I don't tend to think that communities will offer me value, but
Yeah,
in some sense that they can. I'm not naturally drawn to like being a part of a group in any way because I
yeah,
find that what a group does in a lot of ways is, you know, a group, it's like you bring people in and then the group seems to sort of subsume
yeah,
people into
yeah,
a sort
yeah,
of mass, and then
yeah.
that mass can be stronger than the sum of its
No,
parts, right? But like the whole definition of my type that you're
yeah,
saying here is that we like to be that thing rather than be a part of something
that's
that
great. Yeah,
that exhibits. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Okay, that ended up being a
That's
good
why I
space.
don't like join meditation groups or anything like that. It's not because I disagree with them. It's because if I did do them, like, or same with martial arts, I like to go do the thing and then take something from it. But I don't like to hang around for lunch, like, because
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
doesn't interest me at all. It's not,
I
yeah,
agree. I actually can sense what you're saying that there would be something actually, and so if we sort of been setting out like the role that I would like to take on as this pastor or something of the creative drive, then I in that role can sense the danger to the creative drive that could happen in a group setting because it just can. So, I mean, groups just have a tendency to devolve into this common lowest common denominator, basically. And it's what makes the iconoclast distinctive that is so central to their drive.
yeah. Well, it's almost like the effect a group will have on me is it like it polarizes my individuality.
Yeah,
So that can be either a really good thing in some cases, or really uncomfortable, where like we have a mutual friend who doesn't have that and has the ability to like be a part of a group and like sort of enjoys the sort of like merging of lots of different parties together and actually thrives, for example, on bringing people together.
yeah,
Uh, where like that's not like how I feel at
yeah,
all in those situations. It's
yeah.
completely opposite. Yeah.
Mm, true, true. Okay, do you have did you say you wanted to end on a question for me?
Yeah, I was gonna think of one for you.
Okay.
With, let's see, what would I like to know from you? What do you feel like, you asked me this earlier, but I'd like to hear your answer for it. What do you feel like your biggest block for you sort of unfolding your own art is, or like what do you feel like that would inhibits you from doing better in what you're doing, what you're trying to build?
That's a really good uh
Whether it be in your own poetry or actually the system, or
yeah,
both.
yeah, yeah, great question. I I think poetically, I'm going to answer two separate ones and I'll keep them as succinct as I can. Poetically, I think that I know, like I've read a lot. So I mean, that's how I was able to sort of see this pattern in the literature. Um, but there's something uh, systematic that my poetic creative drive, I think, could benefit from having. As I've been expressing myself through my poems, I've been learning different. I can sense that there is, as partly the system is about, there's an underlying system, an underlying order, but there's still a shift that I can see these higher poets more developed than I am, doing where it's not just being faithful and having fidelity to an essence. They're doing something larger than that. They
Yeah.
have some kind of a vision of human behavior, and that's something that I'm having to work towards and grope towards in the dark.
Yeah.
And then,
I
and
think I
then
can actually get a sense of what you mean from that.
okay, cool, good. And then the for the system, I would just say that the only thing that's blocking it is really just having to actually build an online community and find the people who are interested in working the lines that we've sort of been working along in this video. So
I guess build it and they will come.
yes, that's what they say. So yeah, good talking to you. And yeah, I look forward to hearing how it lands and how it settles for you, and then we can um, keep discussing as
Mm.
it comes to us.
Mm. Pleasure.
Cool. All right, man.